I don't know if you can see that. Well, that's a day. We made something, it's kind of roughed in, you know. I left a little on it right there, kind of whatever, but those holes, they might not be centered perfectly, so you might have to hog them out a little bit. Whatever it is, you know, sad as it sounds, we may have to make some bolts for that, you know. Take a bolt, put it in a drill, weld it down to something, put it in a drill press, punch the center of it out, slide it down on the shaft, and weld it and bolt it on. As sad as it sounds, you know, I'm trying to find some bolts that will go in it, but the bolts that came out of it were really long, so that's just the way it is. Right there it is. It's dark out here. I can't beat on that motor. It's getting too late. Neighbors got kids. They don't want to hear me thumping on it too hard. Hopefully when we draw that back, it'll pull that up off that diff. I mean, there might be just enough room to change oil where it's at. That would be beautiful. You know, if it ain't too much when you get the motor mount in it, you know. If not, we'll take a self-tapper, drill it in the back of the oil pan, and make it finesse. But we're still... I know that pipe's in the way, but, you know, you're probably at the top an inch and a half, maybe. So if I'd pull it up about an inch and a half as far as it is back, and then we get that firewall back, you know, it's touching right there. You know, it can't come up. That's the problem. Pretty close to being beautiful. We'll get it. Another day of progress. I got it roughed in, and then whatever it takes, we probably find something, hopefully, that'll go in that, and it'll be square. Now that's cardboard ingenuity right there. Like I say, I don't care to do that stuff, and then to make this motor plate, to get in there and make that motor plate, look at all that, how tight it is. You know, it's pretty tight. You gotta make sure that that will turn, and that pipe can go in there and hook up to whatever we gotta hook it up to, and right there how tight it is, it's right against it. So like I say, it just needs to go back just a little bit. Right there's that bracket we're making for it right there. It's on that side. See how it's flat against the firewall? You add a 1/4 inch to that, and you know, you're gonna need an inch. Probably gonna need an inch, maybe 2 inches. If a guy had a porta-pair, he could put it right in there on that, pull that motor out there and take that porta-pair and just push it in. Make it a little cleaner with a block of wood or something, but it'll be a beat fit. So, and like I said, we got more brackets open so we can do whatever and keep the front of this motor cleaned up. I think that'll look better. That's a day. I'm gonna let that, I gotta pick up, so get a bite to eat, and we do all that, and it'll be time to call it good. And we did fix the motor puller. Motor puller's fixed for now. It does have a wheel on it, so should be pretty good. I know I repeat myself a lot, but you know, that's the process of making it fit. That is the process of making it fit. We are getting ready to hopefully bolt this thing back in there and make some motor mounts. Once we make that plate and get that firewall back, you know, that'll be maybe a day or two. We still got to finish that out to make it whatever and get it bolted up with bolts, and that'll take some time. So hopefully we can find some bolts. No big deal. Find something. I'll drag it apart and see what we can do. But then we got to take that alternator off in the manifold, and then once we do get it bolted up and tack something together, bolt it up, bolt it in, pull it out, whatever, and then put that back on there and whatever, and stab it back in there, and if we get the motor mounts on it, we'll go ahead and put all the rest of this stuff on there, and then we can figure out plumbing. Put all that stuff back on there, put the hood on it, and then we'll have to pull that dash out so I can stab in wires there. What I'll do is just cut a hole in it with the plasma. Once I get it apart, take the pieces off that firewall and just cut out a hole big enough and put that up there and just kind of tack with it, and we'll seam seal it back in and then spray paint it. That's what I do, you know, just to make it look. It probably cobbled to a lot of people, you know. I've been seeing some guys putting out some really nice stuff. I'm like, wow, that's See old Puddin making a set of A-arms for that little Will Hop Wilma. Wow, those are nice. So, and that old girl that made those A-arms for that little mini truck and hydraulics, buddy, she D8'd them out. Pretty slick. Pretty slick. Now, I have took trucks apart like that and made sheet metal pieces, but man, that takes a long time. Nobody really would ever pay you for that, you know, and put lead on it and shape it with lead and stuff. But that stuff can't kill you anymore. That's a day. We made a little bit of progress. Fixed our motor puller and made her plate, and we got to drag that motor out and hopefully find bolts, put that in there, and then I'll pull that motor completely out of there and beat that back. And once we get that all beat back, and hopefully we can get the transmission to draw up, and it gives us room. Once we have room, we can start. This bracket would be no brainer. It'd be easy, hopefully. And then it'll take some figuring to do that. I don't know, man. That took a long time to make that. That was longer than I was thinking. You know, I was going to take that little bench grinder and try to cut it down. Wasn't happening. So, going to have to get some cut-off wheels, or, you know, we'll have something here, have something low, just cut a piece of plate to get it to bolt up, and then angle to angle and whatever it takes to where we can put it all in there one piece, and it's not going to be too much to stick it in there one piece with the bolts in it, and then take that factory motor mount, get it over, and whatever we got to do in order to keep it to where we can keep the bolts so you can take them in and off. In and out. That's a lot. And then take all that off, and then take them parts off of it. Might as well clean them up with a little bit of gas and everything, and see what it's going to do to get the motor mounts. You get the motor mounts, and then that pipe's got to come through there. Might have to get a flexi hose, and then definitely have to get one of them little things to make a ring inside of a pipe, or do something. You know, take a pipe and put a pipe over it, and, you know, take one big one, make a small one, and then make a pipe that'll bolt to a bracket. You know, use that front of that motor and take that hose. The hose kind of came over this way, so it might come most of the way. And just put it together with like a big one and a little one. I think that hose that's coming off this truck's a little bit bigger. And it's got to make it to where it's not leaking too. So, you know, you get all the lines plumbed in, motor mounts on, you can work on the fuel lines, and once you get the fuel lines and all that, plug up the evap so it's not going to have vacuum leak, you know, for now, and a supply and a return, and we'll hook that wiring harness up and see if it'll start. Might be able to hook the battery up to the hot side of that post, and it should start the motor and run. And then we'll have to concentrate on getting a transmission shifter. Once we got all of our plant, you know, that'll be a lot. Hooking up lines and hooking up the reservoir and hooking up the wiring harness, because it's got to go inside. That way you can flash the key for all that too. So whatever it takes, and then it'll be hooking up the exhaust. That shouldn't be a huge deal, but it's still something that's got to be done. You could just stick it, you know, just stick it on there and put a turn down pipe right out behind the front tire. I'm not going to do that though. I'll make sure it's all hooked up. But to get that PCM or ECU flash to do what I want to do, it might be a lot. Who knows? You know, they might try to sell you a wiring harness and their PCM. The wiring harness they got something like $250 or $450 with a PCM, I think. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm still waiting on an email, so he might say it can't be done, and, you know, I can take one of those. You just buy a roll of that line or whatever, adapt one to the other, and put a barb fitting in it with a tool and hook it up, but, you know, it's got to be hooked up off of this wiring harness to make it work, I would imagine. So, that's a day. I'm tired. I got to pick up.